Hi, welcome to Don's Manufactory. Well, I kind of got a messy bench here again today. What I am doing, this is a Holley 780, list 3810-3. Where's that dash 8? Kind of hard to tell. Might be a dash 8. It says Remand by Holley. My good friend, he had put a new carburetor on his, well, they call it Rosie, his equipment truck. This was years ago, decades ago actually, because he couldn't make this one work right. He tried to rebuild it, and obviously things weren't going well. In the float bowls, doesn't have the brass floats, it's got these plastic ones. Boy, real butterfingers. The Neyland seat were screwed all the way down to where the nuts wouldn't even turn the valves. The floats were all the way down. Obviously, the truck was flooding, and he couldn't control it. And so he just gave up and got another one. One problem was there was some kind of a blow right here at the inlet, so the inlet wouldn't seal, and I just machined that flat so that the gasket will seal, and that'll take care of that. I just ran this on the flat plate to see what would happen, and so just to show you how bad these bodies get, you can see the sandpaper, it touched right there, it touched right there, it didn't touch there. Did touch around this main, that's the feed to the to this throttle booster right here, so that touched, but basically this body is badly warped, and I could put a straight edge on it, but I don't think you'd be able to see it from up there. Yeah, you can't really see it. So the back side I was just getting to here. Sorry I got started without even thinking about shooting this, but here we go. This has got a metering plate on the secondary side, which requires one of these clutch drive screwdrivers to get these little clutch drive nuts or screws out. Boy, none of these screws are tight. Wow. So I'm assuming that the gaskets are just dried out then. They don't normally have as much leakage problems as the front metering blocks do. Normally there's a metal plate between this metering plate and the gasket. There's a real thin shim of a plate, but I don't see one. I have a feeling somebody forgot to put it on there. There it goes. So basically, these are the main jets, and then this little bleed right up at the top, that is your idle bleed for the idle and off-idle slots. So on the secondary side of these, there is a transfer slot and just the smallest of idle bleeds. So the idea is that it keeps the circuit alive. It pulls fuel through there, so you don't have to wait for the transfer slot to open up for fuel to be present at the transfer slot. Otherwise, it might have a bit of a tip-in stumble right there. When the secondary's open, there would be a lag before it goes. Something else I'd not ever seen on one of these is this here. It's a little check valve that's in the vacuum feed to the power valve, and that serves as an anti-backfire check valve. So if there's a backfire in the motor, that check valve closes and it doesn't rupture the power valve. So one thing I did before I tore this apart, I couldn't get a good seal on this hole unless I make a tool, which I think I'm going to do. So before I took it apart, I vacuum checked this cavity and it was leaking like crazy. There's a lot of things about this carburetor I don't like about how it was rebuilt. I don't like being able to move the secondaries this far without this thing holding the secondaries actually closed. You know, when I close the throttle, I want it to make sure that those secondaries are closed so that it's always coming down to idle. It has number 70 jets. It's either an H or it's supposed to be a 4, as in 70.4. And only on factory carburetors do you find jets that have a decimal point on them. You know, because the factory wants the jetting to be absolutely perfect. So instead of putting in a 71 or a 70, they have a 70.4. I have seen that before. So I did test this power valve. It is good. It's a 8.5, which means it opens at 8.5 inches of vacuum. This starts to move at 4 inches of vacuum, and then it's completely closed at 8.5. So, boy, if you ask me, I think the inside of this, instead of being just a spring and a tapered seat that opens, is either opened or closed, I think these should have a needle and a body that comes through, and then you just put a jet in there, screw a jet in. So you could have a needle sticking up, and then you could change the jet size, and then have a metered opening for the power valve. I intend to try to manufacture one of those. I think I can make it out of brass. That's, you know, on my wish list of, hey, let's make things better. This is something that every self-respecting Holley guy has. These are like the jets out of a million carburetors I have worked on over the years, including Ford ones, the big fat ones. Tools for that I made out of a screw there with a counter-rotating bind, and that's for drilling a little tiny hole. Where's my metering block? A little tiny hole, getting a hold of this, and then I can pull the metering, because they look like this down on the inside of the carburetor. The idle mixture bleed is right here, and then it comes up, mixes with the air right here, goes down, and then gets adjusted through the screw. And but this metering block on this carburetor doesn't have it. It's just like my double pumper. The idle bleed is right there. The fuel bleed for the idle circuit is right there. So this goes back and then into the idle well, comes up, see it's plugged here at the top, comes across right here, then goes down through the screw and out to the transfer slot and idle hole right there. And this slot here is your timed spark port opening. Okay, so that's a little reference of what is. Anyway, I'm building this carburetor for my brother for one of his cars. And I know my friend had a lot of trouble with it, but, you know, what the hey. I should be able to just whip the cure to this thing. Here's another thing I got to do. This choke was all froze up. I kind of shot it with WD-40, but it's all rusty right here. You can see that. See, it's all rusty, but I got it working, but I want to take it apart and clean it. With a standard transmission, when you let off the gas to make the shift, well, then the secondaries close, and then you have to wait for them to open again. So I've always ran double pumpers on my standards so that I don't have that lag when you hit the gas. Something they sort of allude to in Ford versus Ferrari, where he says there's a lag every time I hit the gas. And he said, well, let's get a mechanical throttle assembly and rebuild it or whatever. And the thing that I thought was really dumb, if you look in that scene when he's talking about a lag and getting rid of the vacuum secondaries, that particular GT40 has got Weber carbs on it. So there's no way, there's no vacuum secondaries on Weber carbs. So that thing was not suffering from the problem that they were talking about. There's a lot of those in that movie for car guys. Okay, so this is one of those modifications I do to the chokes on these. If you take this and flip it over, you can unwind the spring here that holds the choke closed by about half a turn, and that makes the spring light enough that when you set the choke where you want it and then you crack the throttle, like when you're driving it cold, the mass of air hitting the choke blade will actually unload the choke, and it makes it so much more drivable. You don't have a problem of you've got the choke set so that it runs really good when it's cold, when it's idling, but as soon as you hit the gas, then it's flooded. It's a little bent too. Come on. There it goes. Ah. Yeah. So I'll get this all cleaned up. And it should be a good carburetor. I'll get the body flat. And as I put it together, I'll run all these little checks on it. I wish I would have thought of that way to check the power valve circuit with my own carburetor before I put it together. If I'd have thought of it on my carb, I would have been able to check it as I go, because what I was ending up doing was putting the carburetor back on the car, starting it up, letting it run a little while, then turning it off, taking the carb off and disassembling it and looking for fuel inside the cavity. So this is the way it normally is. See, it's got quite a bit of tension on it. This pin here, this pin right here, sticks through that slot. It's actually opening the choke. And then the spring closes the choke. But it's just too much tension there. So what we got to do is lessen some of the tension. And the easy way to do that is to just take this and flip it over, see? See how it moved from there to there? See over here, let me get this just right, my big fat hand's in the way. Okay, there's the factory position right there. And when you flip it over, see, it's up there where the spring was. Okay, now, see, there's a lot less pressure. See, like when the choke is fully closed, see how little pressure there is on it? And that's what allows the mass of air to open the choke. Now the spring gets tighter as it's open, so that effect is lessened as you open the choke. It's not as prevalent. If somebody's going to be using a manual choke to get their car started in the cold, it just makes it so much easier to start and run and drive, because you can leave your choke on and you can take off. And if you're wondering what I'm using for a flat plate, actually I'm just using the base of my drill press. Here it is, real simple setup. Here, your guys are jiggling. There we go. Simple setup. I'm just using my flat machine surface on my drill press. It is a flat plate. I got some 220 sandpaper there. And I just make a few drags. There we go. And then I just keep it pressure even. Drag it slowly across. There you can see it starts to flatten it out. So you can see where it's touching. It's touching the main wells and around the outer edge, but not inside here at all. So probably the flooding that this was suffering was fuel being pulled out of the main well right here and just being pulled right into the vacuum chamber for the power valve. So I'm just going to keep going until this is flat, and that should cure it, I hope. Okay. That's where I ended up right there. It's looks really good on this front side. So what I will do is just bolt a gasket, put a gasket on here and screw this together, and then try my vacuum test and see if I still have leaks. It should be easy. On the back side, it feels really good. Nice and flat. Whoops, sorry. Okay, now you can see, yeah, I save everything. All of these parts on old Chevrolet base plates and parts for Quadrajet. You know, I have rebuilt a lot of carburetors in my day. Alrighty, now I've made my bench even more of a mess. I went up to the attic. I had a couple extra plates here that probably have different size jets, orifices. Like this one has pretty big idle metering jets. Anyway, so I'll check these out and see what they are. And I found a single plate. So I'll have to clean this up. But that is the plate that's supposed to go right chair like that. So I got all the parts to get this thing together. I had a couple of chokes. This one has a metal fast idle cam on it. This one has a plastic one. Yeah, they have about the same kind of steps on them. I'll probably use the metal one. So, yeah. And then I got this up there, so I've got the thing to hold the choke in place. So now all I need is to buy one of the round choke things, and I think I can just get those at a parts house. I think I have enough parts to do the deed. I am putting this darn thing together. I've come up with, I'm still missing some screws. I don't have a choke thermostat. Other than that, everything has turned out really good. So at this point, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to go ahead. It had this standard little, supposed to help with the slosh of the fuel, that, and it's supposed to help with the fuel sloshing. But I much prefer this, the tube. Okay, so what I have to do is I have to drill that little hole right there. See, like this one's got. There it goes. Finally. And then we put this little rivet in there, just about like so. And tap it home. That's good enough. That will hold it in. Oops, bumped you again. So I already bolted this up and used my vacuum pump to check the power valve circuit, and it is fine. So no leakage there. So, I sent him another text because he wanted an automatic choke, but he didn't tell me whether he wanted it electric or hot air tube. This is going on in a FE390, and the exhaust manifold has a heat tube built into it, so all he's got to do is plumb the tube from there up to here to run it in the traditional sense. So, things I had to change. Well, one thing I had to change was this, which is the little arm that goes on the choke for fast idle. And manual chokes have this long arm sticking out like this, and the automatic chokes, the screw is tucked in real tight. Because if you look here, you'll see how little room there is between the screw and the body of the choke. So it has to be able to miss there. Looks real good. We've got manifold vacuum, times spark port, PCV valve. Yeah, I ran out of carb cleaner, so I didn't get this part of the throttle body clean. I mean, I cleaned everything else up, but I couldn't clean that up. I don't think brake clean will... Well, I'm out of brake clean too, so a lot of good that does. I machined these 5/8 nuts that adjust the needle and seat because they needed to be perfectly flat in order to seal really well. When I put the fittings in, I went for the big ones. It came with these little ones for a 5/16 tube, and so I wanted the 3/8. That's all I have to show for today. I will have to make a run to the parts store and get that Holley part if they have it. I'm hoping they do, or they can order it or whatever. I mean, I can order it online too. This is a brand new diaphragm, but they put it in wrong. As in, it's supposed to have a hole over here for vacuum, but you can see how they tore it. When you put these things in, you have to put it up like this into the body of the housing, and then hold that up as you push the spring in. I mean, this is all wrinkled, but it should be sort of sitting in there just about like there, just like that. And then it holds its shape really well, so don't allow the spring to plunge the diaphragm. So you hold the diaphragm up, and you've got the spring in the top cover, and you line it up, and then you hold it down. And once you have it down and you pinch the cover, then you can let go of this and then get your screws and put your screws in. And then you won't do this. See, it pulled out here, so it was leaking, and each of the screws ripped because it wasn't in the right place. I mean, just destroyed the diaphragm. So I've decided I'm going to go ahead and put his carburetor on my car to see how it runs, to verify the performance. That darn cat has decided it likes to jump inside the car and claw the upholstery. This car is like a direct replacement for the double pumper. It's got the same lever on the arm there that the throttle linkage hooks to. I did have a little problem with the fuel inlet leaking. I just bent up some 3/8 tubing to make a fuel inlet, so had to sort that out. Can't have it doing that on him. Well, there you go, Jeffy. It runs perfect on my car. I'm having a little bit of problems with fuel leaks on my little thing here because I didn't quite get the length of it right. See how they're kind of spread a little bit, so I'm having a hard time getting those to seal. I need to work on a bit, but I'm going to cut that off and reform the tip so it pulls it together just a little bit, and that should cure the problem with it. And other than that, it has great idle mixture, good throttle response on my car, so I think we're good to go. It's perfect. Nothing left to do but deliver the carburetor to my brother. So, hey, I guess that's where we'll take off on the next video. Thanks for watching Don's Manufactory. I'll catch you later.